All right. I've said it before and I'll say it again. What I'm about to teach on, what I'm about to read, is how you know who the true children of God are. Because there's a lot of Christians out there, 2.5 billion of them, that all claim to be children of God. But 1 John 3 8 through 10 makes it abundantly clear who the actual children of God are. I'm going to read it and I'll explain what I'm about to read. It says, "He that committeth sin is of the devil." And we know, according to 1 John 3 4, sin is transgression of the law, the commandments. So if you transgress the commandments and you break the commandments, and many of y'all don't think you do, but you do, because you don't understand the spiritual implications of the 10 commandments. Even just covetous, for example. Number 10, don't covet. That's not just desiring your neighbor's material goods. Man, you can covet in a million different ways. "For the devil sinneth from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. Whosoever is born of God doth not commit sin." Do you know how many apostate Christians on a daily basis ask me, "So are you telling me you don't sin?" Like, it's because you've been programmed to think it's impossible not to sin, because the man of lawlessness, aka Jesus, Baal, has taught you that. He doesn't want you to think that you can keep the commandments. He wants you to think it's impossible. It's not impossible. It's quite easy to keep the commandments once you get in a covenant. You have the Spirit of truth guiding you into all knowledge and truth. You have a circumcised heart that desires His word above food and everything else. It's not that difficult, people. It's really not. I wish you could understand that. So whosoever is born of God does not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him, and he cannot sin, because he is born of God. In this the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil. Whosoever doth not righteousness is not of God, neither he that loveth his brother. That's the royal law, folks. That's rebuking your neighbor in their sin. Leviticus 19, 15 through 18. 1 John 3, 15. Like all these verses. James 2, 8. They're all there. 1 John 2, 9 through 11. If you hate your brother in your heart, you are a murderer. You hate your brother in your heart when you don't love them, when you don't rebuke the sin that you know could lead them to hell, and you don't say anything about it. But how can you do that if you don't think you can uphold the standard? How on earth? Don't you see what Satan has done? He has taken the teeth out of you. If you don't know the commandments because you don't think you can keep the commandments and they're impossible, then what on earth would be your standard of judgment? Your standard of judgment is the 10 commandments. That's how we know what sin is. It's because if it goes against the commandments, it's sin. So all of you think that the commandments are no longer, you can't keep them. So how on earth would you fulfill the royal law, loving your neighbor as yourself? Because if you don't do that one, like I've said before, it makes you a liar and a murderer. You're a liar because you say that you know God, yet you don't keep that commandment. The elevated commandment that Yeshua himself said that was one of the 2 elevated commandments above the rest. Because I think it's Timothy or James, can't remember where it's at. It says if you fulfill the royal law and love your neighbor as yourself, like you've pretty much fulfilled the entire law. Because to fulfill the royal law of loving your neighbor as yourself, you're going to complete all of them. You can't break any commandments and do that. If you don't rebuke your neighbor because you're worried about what they'll think about you, guess what? That's covetousness. Respecter of persons, preeminence of men, vainglory, like all this. So I want to challenge you For those of you who think you're a child of God, are you really? Do you follow his commandments? Do you follow his covenants of promise? Have you been grafted into the commonwealth of Israel through Ephesians 2:10 through 12, the covenants of promise, keeping the 10 commandments, and eating clean, the rainbow covenant? Do you fulfill the royal law? Do you rebuke your neighbor in their sin? Do you fulfill Titus 1:13, rebuking the fables of the church strongly? The fables all these people speak. I'm telling you, for the last 3 days online, it has been nothing but fables out of everybody's mouth with no scriptural backing whatsoever. They just blurt out what they think it is and what they've been told it is, and they have no scripture to back it up. And then when I ask them for scripture, they give me the one where Yeshua says, I give you 2 elevated commandments, but they can't define those. They just give me the verse where he says it. Great. What good does that do for you if you don't know what it means? Are you actually a child of God? Do you love God? 1 John 5:3. All Christians will say they do. 1 John 5:3 makes it abundantly clear to love God and know that you love God is to obey his commandments. I just wish y'all would just listen to this. You don't have ears to hear, and it's because of your idolatry. You've become deaf, dumb, and blind, Psalms 115, 135, 2 Thessalonians 2:11, because of your idolatry of Christmas and Easter. Then, when you want to go worship God in your own vain imagination of what you made him up to be, guess what you're doing? You have now made God into something other than he is. So now, not only are you taking his name in vain, blaspheming his character, you're also now worshiping an idol because it's not the one true God. You've misrepresented his character because you don't know the scriptures, because you don't follow the covenants of promise. You need to follow the covenants of promise to get the spirit of truth. Then you can worship him in spirit and truth. You can't do that if you're not obeying his commandments. I don't know how much more plainer I can make this. You have to obey the commandments to know God. You have to. It's the only way you get to know him. It's the only way you get to love him. Anything else, you've concocted your own vain imagination of what you think it means to serve God and love God. You have lied and deceived yourself into thinking these things because you've been handed over to a strong delusion, and that strong delusion is playing out of your mouth every day on these groups. I mean, it's blowing my mind just how many in these groups. They literally have no idea. All of them. Every single comment is so far off the truth. It's not even a matter of funny. It's saddening, sickening, disgusting, and it breaks my heart. Because I'm in there trying to tell you the truth, and y'all hate me. Y'all revile me. It's not just me. It's not me. Y'all hate the truth. All my brothers and sisters who say this stuff, you hate us. Just like they did Yeshua back in the day. Why did they hate Yeshua? Why did the Pharisees hate Yeshua? Because they loved their traditions. And when you step on the toes of your traditions, it makes people mad, because that's what Yeshua was doing, rebuking the Pharisees' traditions for truth. He was trying to give them truth, and they hated him to the point of killing him. This goes into my message yesterday. If you want to be a child of God, you've got to fulfill his commandments, and the royal law is one of the biggest ones. It's the one everybody falters on. It's the one that always stops it. They can follow the 10, they can eat clean, but then when it comes to the royal law, there's something in them. They can't hack it. They can't do it. It's covetousness. It tells you all throughout Scripture, covetousness. Covetousness is always the one that makes everybody stumble and fall. So you better get rid of that and stop being scared of everybody and stop being scared of what you have been commanded to do, or you're going to end up in hell. You're going to end up in tribulation, having to do the same exact thing I'm telling you right now in tribulation when it's 1,000,000 times worse. So if you want to do yourself a favor, do it now, and your reward will be great, and you'll be spared from the tribulation.